All right, everyone. What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? Thank you, everybody, for joining in tonight. I apologize, a little scrambling here at the last moment. I somehow, for some reason, I set up tonight's live show at one particular link, and then I was messing around making sure this all looks good, and I deleted that link somehow on YouTube. And I didn't figure that out until about 8:54. So I was like, dang, okay, well, I guess I got to make a new link. So I'm happy that all of you found the new link. Thank you for adjusting with me. It is surely my fault. And maybe that's bound to happen when you're on the road as I am. You're probably looking at this and saying, maybe some of you don't know, Ed, that's not your place. Well, you're right. I am in Orlando, Florida. I am over here seeing my sister Diane and her husband Jim. And they are down here from Ohio. They have a timeshare. They have a couple different places that they can go over here in Orlando. They have a timeshare program through Marriott. And so they've been here since maybe Friday or Saturday. And so I came over to visit them. And if you want to look it up on a map, we are at Lake Shores, the Marriott property called Lake Shores in Orlando. And I have been here. I got over here. I think I got here around noon on Monday. And I will be leaving tomorrow morning to go back to Clearwater Beach to finish up Friday's episode, have some other things to do. And then on Friday morning, I'll be back in the car and I'll be driving to Ocala, Florida for a disc golf tournament up there this weekend. So you can predict that this Friday's episode will be out very early, kind of a lot earlier than last Friday's was, and it was even out early. So Jody, you can email me at unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. So that's what's going on. So I'm going to drive the whole way back to Clearwater Beach tomorrow. And then Friday morning, I'm going to jump in the car again and drove to Ocala, which is a 2.5-hour drive. And I have, thank you, Shuri. And I'll have one round on Saturday, one round on Sunday, but it's 24 baskets, not 18. And Ocala up there, it's a little tough course. So it should be interesting. And I haven't practiced or played all week. So we'll see what goes on. But I'm over here in Orlando. I love hanging out with my sister and her husband, Jim, two very cool people. Kind of just been sitting around. I love talking cars with Jim. And we went out to eat a few times. We went to a pizza place this evening. And it's just been really nice. And so that's what's been going on. And I haven't seen them, I think, in over a year. But I think they told me they're going to be back down here in December. So that'll be nice. So that's where I am. And this is my room right here. And I will sleep here tonight in this room. And then once again, tomorrow morning, headed back to Clearwater Beach. It is about a little, Jill got in first and made it with Bebe. Well, that's pretty funny, Jill. Vegas says she hasn't been here in a while. Happy to see you. Kathy, Susan, Delane, Concha, Kathy again, Laura, Christine from Canada, Jasmine, Pally, Sharon. Hello, Sheree. What's up? Twinkle, Ann, Jody. Yeah, Jody, a little bit. Mandy. Mandy says it's supposed to be good weather this weekend. It is up in Ocala. It's supposed to be, yeah. We got off the course on Sunday right before it rained. It was very windy both Saturday and Sunday and when we played on this past weekend, but luckily it didn't rain. It rained right after we got off the course on Sunday. So that was kind of nice. And I played really well. I finished 4th out of 30 some. So I was really pleased with that. I hope I can do that this weekend. But this weekend, yeah, I don't think it's supposed to rain in Ocala. But the course is hard enough as it is. A lot of trees, very narrow. So we'll see. Vegas, Hyatt, I'm doing great. Vegas. Happy to be over here. I feel very fortunate that I can have time to come over here and visit my sister. I luckily got most of Friday's episode done this past weekend, so I could come over here, did a little work, but could just hang out with them. And so it's all good. Mandy says Mandy says she's in DeBerry. Maybe I've told you this before. I don't know, Mandy, but you have an excellent disc golf course there that I've not played yet, but I will be playing in a tournament there the last weekend of November. I've already signed up. Yep. Hello, Joyce. Good to see Joyce. So that's where I am. Where else have we gone? We gone to a Noodles and Company. We went to eat. We went to a Miller's Ale House. Went to a breakfast place called First something. I forget it now. I forget what it's called, but it was good. Hello, Carrie. And also did a little bit of eating here at home and just hanging out. But the mosquitoes last night, I posted a picture. Maybe some of you saw it, that I was sitting out there by the pool. My sister and her husband were in this like pool. It's like a lazy river, and they had their inner tubes, and I don't do that. But I sat out there about 15 minutes. The mosquitoes started attacking me, and I was out of there. It was really weird. I had pants and a shirt on. They actually flew up the back of my shirt and like bit me like in the middle of my back. What mosquitoes do that? You know, First Watch. Thank you, Jill. That's exactly what it's called. First Watch is the breakfast place. Yeah, it's very organic, very nature-ish, very natural type place. But it was good. Not the type of place I would usually go to, but it was very good. Jill, thank you for pointing that out. First Watch. That's exactly what it was called. I had a salmon and vegetable frittata. It was good. It was good. I love salmon. Especially in an omelet or something like that. I love lox and bagels and stuff. With cream cheese stuff, love that. So that was right up my alley. Jill says, best bacon ever. I don't know. I did not have any bacon there today, Jill. Twinkle says, you are a mosquito magnet. Twinkle, kinda. And I do carry bug spray in my disc golf bag, but did not have it last night. Vegas, you didn't have bug spray. I did not. It was out in the car. I didn't even think of Vegas. By the time I got bit and everything, I was like, I'm so over this. It's too late. Twinkle, I am too. She says, I am too. They eat me alive. I've read that it has something to do with like blood type. I don't know. Is that I don't know if that's true or not. I've pretty much always attracted mosquitoes as far as back as I can remember, going way back to living in Pennsylvania. So I don't know. Hey, I'm a likable guy. Type O, Joyce says, I don't think I have type O. Don't. Fishing says, so glad to be back. Worked long hours and I crashed when I got home 2 weeks and be back working long hours. Thank you, Fishing. I appreciate it. Twinkle says AB positive. I have to tell you, I'm not even sure what my blood type is. I've never given blood. Just never. Okay. So that's what's been going on over here. Didn't go to Disney or anything. But it's just good to be over here. It was a nice drive over here and everything. And this place is very nice. Very nice. Little bit says, me and my son are the same, Ed. I go outside and I get bit. Yeah, got to do it. All right. Let me first get something quick out of here. I just want to talk about the Bradley Brooks getting into the program. Bradley Brooks poll. I gave you a variety of choices. Hello, Charlotte, in the discussion group. And what did I say? Foul play, walked off and committed suicide, overdosed, and somebody covered it up. Majority view, I should say the most common choice was foul play, followed by he overdosed and somebody covered it up. Should know in the think tank, those two choices were also the most popular. I don't think anybody believed that he committed suicide somewhere and wasn't found, or that he walked off. Maybe the stress got to him and he walked off to start a new life. But maybe a couple people were open to that. But foul play and an overdose were the most common choices. But it's what was interesting to me. I think I can say this is that some people, of course, looked at Aubrey and Darian. You wondering what was going on there. But it was myself, and I'm not saying that I'm right, but it was surprising to me that those people who kind of was, really analyzing that during the think tank, that they did not come to it the same way I did. And I have to be honest with you, and what I wrote on Patreon, patreon.com/unfound podcast, by the way. And I'm not going to give it all away, but my opinion on Brad's disappearance was focused on Aubrey and Darian as well, but for a different reason than the others who kind of had that choice in their minds in the think tank, which was very surprising to me because on the other hand, I thought that if people were going to be suspicious of Darian and Aubrey, that they would come to it the same way I did. They came to it from a totally different angle. I was just surprised. This is why we do these think tanks. You just don't know. People can be thinking the same thing, make the same choice, but they come to it from different directions. And that's why we talk these things out. And that's why nobody's right, nobody's wrong. If we knew what happened, we could just go solve it right now. But lots of different possibilities regarding Brad's disappearance, I think. And we'll just have to see what happens. Being that it is so new, I would not be surprised if a year from now there's more information if it doesn't get solved, of course, in the meantime. I wouldn't be surprised if there is more information a year from now. I think that would make sense given how new it is. If the disappearance was 20 years old, then I would probably say not. But being that it's somewhat new, and we'll keep our eyes peeled for that information. But I deeply appreciate Misty and Ashley being on the program. I think they both thought that it came out very well. And I'll be talking to them within the next couple weeks. So there you go. Once again, I haven't mentioned this yet, but if you are watching this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please like it if you could on your device, whatever you are using tonight, whether it be a phone, a tablet, a good old-fashioned laptop computer. Maybe even some of you have a smart TV like my dad does. And you're watching on TV, so I'm looking really, really big tonight. I don't know. So if you can find out how to do that, figure out how to do that on your device, I'd deeply appreciate it if you could like this video as you watch it. And once again, if you are not yet a subscriber to the YouTube channel, please do so. Mandy says, I completely agreed with your theory in the email. What was he doing with Aubrey piqued my interest from the beginning of the story. Yeah, I still stand by that. I will stand by that until if there's new facts that contradict that, Mandy, then I guess I will have to change my position. But that seems like a firm position to take right at this point. All right. Well, I know a lot of you are tuning in tonight because of what has happened over the past week. We're just within the last, 48 hours? And that is Steve Panky being charged with the murder of Janelle Matthews. Now, it's almost to the day a year ago that Steve was on the program. Maybe to remind some of you, I'm going to guess most of you know I interviewed him last year, but just to remind you how that all happened and just prepare, I'm going to be talking a lot about this. So just prepare yourselves, get comfortable. Because it's very important. I don't think I'd even heard about Janelle Matthews' disappearance. There's, of course, thousands and thousands and thousands of disappearances. And out of the blue, Steve contacted me. somehow knew about the program. Don't know how. Have no idea. Just don't even remember him even saying how he found out about it. I don't know. But I know he did other interviews last year. Of course, I discovered that. So I talked to him. I talked to my assistants. It's not something we usually do, as you all know now, to interview a suspect, the person who's possibly a suspect, a person of interest, whatever he was at this time last year. And talking it over, said, yeah, let's do it. Even though it's not normally what we do, I made the decision that reporter first. And if somebody who is there's a story going out there, a disappearance, a murder, whoever else, and that person wants to come on the program, I'm going to give that person the opportunity to talk, but it has to be done under, my rules, not their rules. This person came to me. I didn't go to them. We have enough people to talk to and interview and everything. We don't, not necessarily, we don't need one more. And I put that in quotes. But on the other hand, if this person, whoever he or she is, goes along with the standards, the rules, the outline that I put together, then it's okay. And I could tell you that I told Steve before we started the interview, at any point you'd start saying, I'm not going to answer that. I'm not going to do that. Well, I can't talk about that. The interview's over. The interview's over. Because I'm only doing this to get answers. I'm not doing this for attention or anything else. This guy came to me. So we did the interview. Wish the audio was a little better. Was working through some audio issues at the time. But we got it done. And it played. And I know a lot of people listened to it. And it kind of went away. Hear things. Of course, Janelle's remains were found last year before he was even on the program, and Steve told his entire story. He, of course, claims that, at least on the interview, that he did not kill Janelle Matthews. I think I asked him as many questions as I could. As with any interview, you have to decide whether you believe the person is telling the truth or not. I didn't think that there were any contradictions and any answers that he gave. But I also know that it's been a long time and he could have gotten his story straight to the point where there wouldn't be any contradictions. Certainly possible. And the truth is, a lot of things that he said, there would be no way to verify them. For example, his father-in-law saying they did something. If you remember that interview, there's no way to verify that now. The guy's dead. So just have to go on what the person said. Have to go on what Steve said. And I think maybe, although I have not talked to him on the phone since, I think he and I had one back and forth through email. And then I think that he sent me some other emails and I did not respond to them. He sent me some paperwork or something like that. And I felt that I didn't need to respond to him. So I haven't spoken to Steve since, and did we even speak on the phone after he was on the program? I'm not even sure. At least through email, I'm thinking that I haven't had any email correspondence with him since January or February this year, something like that. It's been a while. And of course, I have enough other things to do. So it's really not in the forefront of my mind. Of course, I have not forgotten about it. And I was hearing things behind the scenes, but that's about it. But then it all comes out that this, I don't know if it was a leak or anything. Hello, Heather. That there was an indictment coming down and there was a grand jury that was convened, and the grand jury saw fit that the prosecutor's office could charge Steve with just to keep it simple, with the murder of Janelle Matthews. And he is now in custody. I think he was in Idaho. They went to get him. I think he was taken into custody without any no chases or anything like that. I think that he went into custody, and that is where it sits as far as where Steve sits right now. Of course, if you remember last year he was on the program. He believes that he's being set up he had nothing to do with it. And he believes that since this all happened, the police have been trying to pin it on him. I think I could boil that, a 3-hour interview down into kind of that. So, but then yesterday there was a press conference, and this is one of those situations where you think you know a case, and then this prosecutor comes out. It was very, very short. Generally, these press conferences don't reveal much, and that was kind of the same situation yesterday. Sometimes they do. I think in what was it, Kamisha Hollis's, it did, and then Tiffany Johnson's. I remember the press conference for that case as well before it went to trial. That was fairly informative as well. At least that's the way I remember it. But I think our expectations going in is not much is going to be said. But here are some of my opinions. When I watch here, here's what was notable from the press conference. And if you see me looking down to my left, your right, I guess. This is where my other computer is. I watched the press conference, and what was notable is the prosecutor, and I didn't write his name down. He said Steve didn't become a suspect until 2018, mid 2018, which is surprising to me, given that Janelle wasn't found by accident until 2019. If you will remember, she wasn't found. She was found by accident by a group of workers digging a pipeline or something like that outside of Greeley, Colorado. And they happened just out in the middle of this field. They came across the remains, buried remains. And so that happened in 2019. And that's, I think, eventually what led Steve to being on the program. And if you remember, Steve talked about how they served a warrant at his house and they came in and did all the stuff. Steve went through all of that when I interviewed him. But it was notable, like I said, because this guy in the press conference yesterday said that Steve did not become a suspect until 2018. Whereas we heard in the interview with Steve that, a month after Janelle went missing, he went to police and told the story about what his father-in-law said to him. And then he claimed over the years that the police were after him. Those are his words. That's not me saying it. That's what he said. And it's, of course, me condensing it. But that's what he said during his interview last year. But now in the press, and I think this was fairly obvious that he was a suspect. He talked about it. And I think there was acknowledgement in newspapers going way back, media accounts, that he was. So that the guy in the press conference yesterday said that Steve didn't become a suspect until mid 2018 was surprising to me. So I don't know. Maybe there is a way to reconcile all of that somewhere, or this guy yesterday is lying or something. But that's what did catch my ear, first of all. Second of all, what caught my ear is that Michael Rourke, same day in the Chris Watson, Patrick Frazee case. Thank you for getting that name, Michael Rourke. Thank you, Cherie. So Michael Rourke was the guy who did this press conference. The other thing is he admitted during that, and using my words, that there's no forensics such as DNA. If we want to believe this guy, if we want to believe Michael Rourke, I guess we'll just have to believe him. He says that they've been able to connect Steve to this murder without DNA. And some of the stories that have come out since the press conference yesterday is that his ex-wife said that he would go to the middle school and where Janelle just happened to go to. Hello, Diane. And would watch kids walk home, she said. And Steve's aunt lived right down the street from where Janelle lived. However, in one of the accounts, it said that Steve was a neighbor of Janelle Matthews, and that was not the impression that he gave he said that he lived a couple miles away. They, in the press conference, it also stated that they went to the same church. Whether that was overlapping time, I'm not sure we're sure of that. But most importantly, though, no DNA. So we get to thinking, how is it then? Because I think we've gotten, myself included, not just the public, but I include myself in there. When we see these older murders getting solved, it is usually because of DNA, 99% of the time, maybe even more than that. So to hear that in Janelle Matthews' murder, that forensics DNA, well, forensics may play a role, but it's not going to be DNA, no biological forensics, that's not going to play a role. Have to say I'm surprised. Because I think we just take that for granted. But that is what Michael Rourke said. Although maybe he's completely lying. We can only go by what he said. So that's a couple points from the press conference that caught my ear. What was tough about the press conference is you could hear what he was saying. It was really, really difficult to hear what the reporters were asking. And I had to go back and listen to it, and still was a little difficult. So you kind of had to interpret what the reporters asked by listening to what he was saying. But here's some of my opinions. And this is not to be critical, but my first opinion is this. Let's be clear about one thing. The only reason, and I'm not here to defend Steve, I'm not here to attack Steve, Sheree and I, I will admit that when we did the interview last year, that Steve seemed fairly convincing to me. Like I said, I didn't hear any contradictions in his story, but that doesn't mean he wasn't lying. He left me with the impression that it's conceivable that he could be innocent. There's that. My assistant Sheree, who of course is the moderator in here, she takes a completely different view, which is totally fine. Opinions are permitted amongst the Unfound crew. But it was interesting that Sheree and I were talking about it. I said, I could have swore, Sheree, that you thought that he might be innocent as well. No, she's saying, no. I suspected him all along. Okay. And that's fine. But let's just be clear that the only reason Steve's in custody now is because a group of pipe layers happened upon her remains. So it just seemed to me a little self-congratulatory yesterday at that press conference, talking about great police work and everything else. Janelle's remains were found by accident. Now, how much work was it since her remains were found to get to the last couple days where Steve was charged? I don't know. But the only reason Steve Panky is in custody now is because Janelle was found by accident a year and a half ago. So there's that. I just didn't hear a lot. I think that I would have felt better if the prosecutor, what's his name, Michael Rourke, thank you, Sheree, just said, we're very lucky. We were very fortunate that her remains are found. We want to appreciate the guys who called it in as soon as they found the remains and kept none of that. Just all self-congratulatory, how we're finally bringing this guy to justice. And, so yeah, I think it would have been, more of a team player to just admit that they were very fortunate there. What's going on? Sheree, you want to take care of that? Thank you. So it was just a little self-congratulatory. It's not like the police found Janelle's remains. Somebody happened upon them. Number two, we have to remember that this is a grand jury. It wasn't a trial, of course. And as been stated many times in true crime programs, I think if you want to go the Hollywood route, Anytime they did a grand jury scene in Law and Order, for example, or maybe you watch something like on court TV or something, most of the time when prosecutors go to grand juries, they do get an indictment for something. We have to remember that in a grand jury, there's no defense attorney. You're not allowed to plead the fifth. Anybody who is subpoenaed must show up. They have no protection of a lawyer, anything like that. Okay. So just because prosecutors get permission for an indictment of first-degree murder or something, that's not a real trial. You have to remember that. It's kind of like how would you portray it? It's like the preseason in baseball or football. It's like a practice run. It's not the real thing. Kind of looks like the real thing, not the real thing. So we have to remember that. We also have to remember that, and this is something I brought up to Shereen. She surely is aware of this. But we can't forget John Mark Carr, who talked himself into jail regarding John Benet Ramsey's murder. And everybody was excited, including law enforcement that was responsible for John Benet Ramsey's. He's turning himself in. He said he did this. He said he did that. And then eventually it turned out that, he was he not even in the country when John Benet Ramsey disappeared or something like that, that it was just so obvious that he couldn't have been at her house on that night, but he wanted to turn himself in for the murder. And this is kind of the point that I have with Steve Panky. I want you to know that at no time did Steve Panky and I have any coarse words, disagreements, calling each other names, nothing like that. He and I got along just fine. However, I will continue to say this. He's a weird guy. He just is, whether he murdered Janelle or not. Weird guy. I think that this guy is capable of saying anything. He's just a weird guy. And it may be because he's weird that he murdered Janelle. Totally possible. But I think that I would be much more sure that he killed Janelle if he didn't have the kind of personality that he does. That's where I stand at this point. Now, I've been told I've just been told that there's a lot more to this case than what was covered in the interview last year. To that, I have no doubt. But I still look at this from a standpoint of a disappearance case, and it was a disappearance case for all those years until her remains, turned up. I'm still trying to figure out how, if it was Steve, how he happened to just be on that street at that time, how he happened to go over to Janelle's house right at the correct time, knowing somehow that her family members weren't home. I guess if he did it, he ended up there somehow. And we do have a disappearance in Unfound's catalog that's like that. Evelyn Hartley, who disappeared from La Crosse, Wisconsin, way back in the 1950s. Kind of the same thing. Now, she wasn't home alone, but she was home with the baby. It wasn't her house, but she's there, teenager. Somebody came in and got her. Whether it was somebody who was stalking her in particular or somebody who was going to rob the house and then discovered that Evelyn was there. We just don't know. We still don't know 50, 60 some years later. So, I try to remember that. Is this something where somebody was trying to break into Janelle's house and she just happened to be? Maybe it was Steve trying to break into Janelle's house and it's all possible. But I think that if this was a disappearance in the 21st century, if we were coming, Janelle Matthews disappeared in 2015, and it came up that Steve Panky was a suspect because he was talking about it, and would still be asking those same questions. Well, if he lived here and she lived here, then how did he get over there? How did he? It's a very small window, on and on and on. Now, might have social media help. We might have cellular phone help. A lot of things they didn't have in the 1980s. But I think we would still be asking the same questions. How did that guy end up that house at that time when he didn't live near there? Maybe was he following Janelle? We have to remember that Steve Pankey's ex-coworker, Russ Ross, who Steve did not like, drove Janelle home. Is that a coincidence? Is it something? I talked to Russ Ross. He said at no time did he ever think that Steve Pankey was stalking him or following him or anything else. He never ran into Steve any strange places. I talked to Ross before I ended up interviewing Steve. At least that's the way I remember it. So those are still questions that need to be answered. Now, it would seem to me that the prosecutor has figured all of that out to bring an indictment like that. But the tough part is that how are they connecting Steve to the murder if they don't have some biological forensics? Did Steve really keep the murder weapon all these years and they can tie the murder weapon to Janelle? Did they find something of Janelle's in his house? Did they find his fingerprints in her house way back in the 1980s? It seems if that were that, I think he would have been indicted years and years and years ago. It's tough. It's tough. And I still have to ask the big question. Sheree says no different than no body case is really circumstances. Yep. The big questions I have is, would Steve Pankey even be a suspect if he himself didn't infuse himself into the disappearance? No. And also, how would he have known that Janelle was alone that evening? If this is going to go to a trial, I hope we find out all of these questions. We get answers to these questions because we don't have them right now. We just don't have them. So let's see. It's not as easy to do this. Susan said maybe he was a person of interest and not technically a suspect. Hello, Blaze. Hello. Was it a Zoom call? No, it wasn't a Zoom call, Blaze. We did that interview over the phone with Steve. Hello, Karen. Hello, Charlotte. Twinkle. Just wondering if it's all circumstantial. Maybe. Delane asks, were they able to determine a cause of death from the rains? Not that I read. I'm not saying it's not out there, but maybe it was strangling. I don't know. Might have been able to determine it. I just don't remember if that's been in the Sheree says no, Delane. Hello, Carla. Thanks for joining. Penny B says so much happening this week. Certainly, Penny. Charlotte, it just said online that she died from a gunshot wound to the head. I didn't see that, Charlotte, but if you say it, then I guess, did Steve own a gun? What kind of gun was it? Did they ever find it? Of course, they'd have to have the bullet to be able to match it to a gun. I don't know. Sheree says no different than no body cases, circumstances. Twinkle, yes, I think he talked himself into the case. Kathy, he had to have been watching her that night. So, Kat, I guess what we're saying here, that maybe he did follow her home from that court. Maybe he was at this course thing and followed her home, and it just happened to be his ex-coworker that drove her. Possible. The question is how maybe Steve was following her for a while and he finally found the opportunity Just everything just unfortunately came together that night. She's home alone. Very well could be. Not something that I would bet on normally in a disappearance, but it's scientifically, I guess that's something I keep saying more and more these days. It's scientifically possible. There's no science ruling it out. It just doesn't seem very probable. But Steve hasn't been indicted. I don't know how long it's going to take. It's probably going to take a while if he's going to maintain his innocence. And, we may not see a trial until 2022. So I'm not going to be holding my breath that it's going to happen anytime soon. However, I will tell you that if we can do some things behind the scenes to try to figure out what's going on, we'll bring it to you. We'll do that. And we may have some ways to do that if we can make it happen. But as far as the trial goes, it's not happening anytime soon, with or without COVID. Jody says, I think he saw her on TV. Yes, that was on TV, wasn't it, Jody? That chorus concert. Delane, I thought her room was in disarray. Wouldn't you think there would be touch DNA, but they may not have collected anything from her room? Just hard to say what they would have done in 19, what was it, 84, Delane. It's just hard to say. All I know is what Michael Rook said in the press conference is that there's no biological forensics. So if this is going to get solved, this 36-year-old murder case is going to get solved. It's going to be solved by some other way. And it's going to be the opposite of what we've gotten used to. Once again, with the original Night Stalker and a bunch of other murderers that have been caught going back to the 80s, 70s, and even earlier. It's going to be different. I just don't know how much different. So, I think another point, his wife, his ex-wife, I should say, has been quoted in some of these articles. And being that now she's being quoted, it very well may be that maybe she's been keeping things to herself all these years. And maybe she's ready to talk, because I know that she's been quoted a few different places, even if it's only been one line or two. It seems to me that she would be the one who could confirm or deny what he said in the interview from last year. I'm just wondering how much she is able to say, how much she wants to say. And if she's allowed to say, if she wants to say it, if she can say it, if she's allowed to say it, she may be under some restrictions, given that this could become a court case in which she would be asked to testify. But she surely could add a lot to the story, being that she was there. And I guess it would be then her father who was the one that came over and said something about Janelle that day. Remember, the day after. I don't know. We'll just have to see. We'll just have to see. Did I think that Steve Panky would ever be indicted? I don't know. I have to point that really never thought about it. I came away from the interview thinking that there was certainly a high possibility that he did not murder Janelle. And in fact, I've said it on a previous live show, maybe within the last 6 months, that what makes sense to me is that it was somebody who lived directly in the neighborhood and not Steve, who lived not in the neighborhood, according to everything that I know about it. On the other hand, being that he talked about it so much and infused himself into the investigation, we've learned that some people who do that are only doing it so they can get information to find out what the police know. And that maybe has been what Steve has been doing this whole entire time. Certainly possible. Charlotte said, it said in the New York Times that she died from a gunshot wound to the head and that he owned a gun. Lots of people own guns, Charlotte. How would they connect that bullet hole to his gun is beyond me if they don't have a bullet. I mean, even if let's say it was a 9mm hole. 9mm is the most common. I don't know if it was in 1984. Maybe 38 might have been the most popular caliber at the time. But it being the same bullet hole to gun, really means absolutely nothing. So they'd have to have the bullet itself. Twinkle says, good point. The wife could be talking now. Well, it seems she's already talked, Twinkle, being that she's been quoted in some articles. How much she has said, I don't know. Crystal, I would have to go back and listen to refresh my memory, but on your poll last year, when you asked if Steve was guilty, and I commented that I was leaning more towards yes, and you asked how he would have come across her house, know that she was alone, but I said if he did it, I would have to say it and more to do with Russell Ross than it did her. Crystal, but like I said, I need to go back and listen to it again to refresh my memory on the relationship between Steve and Russell. Well, having talked to Russ Ross, Crystal, Russ Ross said he and Steve had no relationship. Despite what Steve said in his interview and having a problem with them and everything else, Russ told me that Steve and Russ didn't even work in the same department of the company, 7-Up Bottling, I think it was. They didn't even work in the same department. They rarely ran across each other, according to Russ. Now, Steve also brought up the point that the owner of the bottling company's son was a cop, and Steve was trying to weave some sort of conspiracy theory there. But, Crystal, I'm not going to deny that it very well could be that if Steve did have some animus, is that the word, animosity toward Russ Ross, he might have been looking to do something to Russ Ross. And maybe when he saw Russ drop Janelle off, he might have been thinking, hey, that's Russ's daughter. Possible. We may find out. We may not. Certainly possible, Crystal. If that's what you mean, may have something more to do with Russ. Very well could be. Could be. I don't know if there's any facts disputing that, Crystal. So I think you may be onto something there. Very possible. So that's what I have regarding Steve Pankey. I saw his mugshot. He did not look very happy. We see all these pictures of him when he was running for whatever political position he was there in Idaho, and he's all shaven with the glasses, the hair combed and everything. And then you see his mugshot, and he got stubble, and he's not looking too hot. I was certainly seeing a different side of Steve. But I just want to prepare you for one thing. I'm going to continue to say that I don't know if Steve Pankey has a firm grip on reality. So I wonder if his attorney is maybe going to try to get him, get a defense of insanity or something like that. So, Steve Pankey has to be in the top 3 of the looniest, weirdest people I've ever interviewed for Unfound. Maybe he's number 1. Of course, what's her name? Kim Kessler's mom. She was pretty wacky too. I didn't get along with her. I did get along with Steve. So maybe that would make her number 1 wacky. But we just have to remember that. Steve, maybe he's sly. Maybe he's totally there and it's all an act. And that will be something that the prosecution and psychiatrists, etc., will have to figure out. Twinkle says Steve marches to his own drummer. Yeah, maybe on purpose, Twinkle. Blaze said, I think he's paranoid and makes up stories. He definitely knows right from wrong. Otherwise, why protest his innocence? Yeah. Yep. Crazy like a fox or just plain crazy. So Steve Pankey, I'm not going to say that Unfound had any role in him being indicted or anything, although I'm going to guess that his interview he did with me probably was listened to by prosecution, by law enforcement. I'm going to bet that. How much of a role did it play? I don't think we'll ever know. But it certainly was the most complete interview that Steve ever did. And in that press conference, they did acknowledge that Steve had been doing interviews and they knew all about it. So, I'm going to guess that they did hear my interview with him and maybe played a role. Maybe what he said something and they knew it was lies. They heard the 3-hour interview and were able to match it up to what they already knew at the time, and they knew he was lying about things. Very well could be, but I've not been told that. Pally says, do any of us have a firm grip on reality, though? Well, not sometimes, but I don't know if it's all the time, Pally. Jill, I think he's paranoid. He was a part of a bunch of true crime Patreons to see what people knew. Yeah, that's right. He was a Patreon supporter of Unfound for a time, right around the time that he was interviewed. But he's not a Patreon member anymore. And I think that Steve is the first Patreon member to be indicted for murder. Pretty sure. Okay, let's move on to some other things. We'll make sure that that gets tagged. Natasha will make sure that that happens to so people outside of the Unfound's world can come and listen to this or watch this live show to get this recap that I did over the last half hour regarding Steve Panky. We'll make sure to tag it. And if you got in late, you can go back and listen to it later. Crystal says, I definitely need to go back and listen to it again. Please do, Crystal. Let's move on to some other things. Going to be probably, I'm going to be driving to Ocala on Friday morning. And only playing one round. My tea time is 10:40 in the morning. I'm thinking I'll be done by 1, so I'm going to have a lot of time. So I'll probably be working on some YouTube videos, map videos, while I am up there at this Airbnb that I'm staying at. Some of the ones that I want to be able to work on are Patty Action from right there in Clearwater, Dal Phillips from Helena, Tennessee, Mandy Stokes from San Francisco/Oakland, California. And then I was very happy. Thank you so much to Holly Letson, granddaughter of Heidi Diamond. Holly sent me some addresses that I now have that I can use for Helen Diamond's disappearance, and show you where she lived, where she was, where she would have been walking to, because in the interview that I did with Holly way back in 2017, we didn't talk specifically about these different addresses. So I'll be able to now use them. And so I'll be doing those videos. Will I be able to crank all 4 out? I don't know about that, but we'll give it a shot because I will have some time up in Ocala on Saturday afternoon into the night. Actually, on Friday, when I get up there after I go practice on Friday night, I'm going to be actually doing the interview for next Friday's episode. And I'm excited about it. I'm excited about everyone, but it'll be good to finally get this particular disappearance into the Unfound catalog. Kathy says, Highland Diamond, fascinating case. Yeah, it's a lot of different possibilities with that one, Kathy. Lots of them. All right. So be looking for some map videos. And of course, if you are a subscriber to this YouTube channel, then you will get notified automatically when they are uploaded. Next, Unfound Now. Did last week, Stephanie Hollingsworth. She is still missing, coincidentally, from over here in the Orlando area. I actually did a map just to see where it is in Orlando compared to where I am. It's like 20 minutes away. Orlando is a big city. And got lots of views, I think. Unfound Now for Stephanie Hollingsworth has over 1,000 views. And I also read that they're going to try to use satellite imagery to, figure out, the military, or to see if they can find her car using satellites. I have a very high degree of doubt that will work. I don't know how you would ever pick out her vehicle from space, even if you knew the time frame and everything. And truthfully, I don't know if satellite imagery has ever been used to solve a case that way. Now, I do know that there's at least one disappearance out there where somebody was looking at satellite photos and saw a car that was in a pond or a lake, and they said, hey, what's that? And that happened. That has happened. But actually using satellite imagery to see a car, going down the street or whatever else, I don't know if we're to that point yet of technology. I have my high doubts, big time doubts about it. Now, maybe, are there any Google cars that are riding around with the cameras on top? Maybe. But what are the, once again, what are the odds? And I realize they're, trying anything to try to track her down. But if you've read anything about how they're going to use satellite imagery, I just have so many doubts about that. You'd have to get so lucky. It would just be, like Powerball odds, I think, to try to think that a camera caught something. I continue to believe that being that her SUV has still not been found, that the vehicle is not in the Orlando area anymore. That is, that's what I said in the Unfound Now segment, although I think I got the ATM and the Walmart locations flipped, but I apologize for that, but that's what the information was at the time I did it. That she was at the ATM first. Now we know she was at the Walmart. She was at the ATM last. In fact, she was at the Walmart last, and she did buy vodka or whiskey or something like that. So maybe she used the $20 for that instead of for gas. This is how these things can just flip so quickly. Cherie says they have proven that she left the Walmart alone. No, I did see that. Cherie, thank you. Okay. Speaking of unfounds now, and unfortunately I did not put this, did you see where another woman was found deceased in her car in a storage container? Of course, we just had Mary Lane Carter from back in August. That was Unfound Now for August. And she was driving to Georgia, and she didn't get there. And eventually it was determined that she was driving around and drove into a storage unit on somebody's property, closed the doors, and kept the car running, and died of carbon monoxide poisoning. Did you see that another woman did the exact same thing? I was going to write it down here. Unfortunately, I just ran out of time before the show had to go the start. But that happened. And you start to wonder, did the woman who did this just recently get the idea from Mary Lane Carter's disappearance? Because I have to admit that until Mary Lane Carter killed herself in that storage unit, I had never heard anybody doing that. We realize that people commit suicide through carbon monoxide in their garage, start the car. We know that's fairly common as far as a type of suicide. But for somebody to go out there and look for a storage container, one of these storage containers that's put on a big cargo ship that's just sitting there, and go in and shut the doors, I'd never heard of that until Mary Lane Carter. And now we have 2 instances like that within like 2 months. Yeah, Blaze said, I have not seen a second death in storage container. I'm pretty sure. Let me hold on one second. Just let's see if I'm just imagining this. Could have swore I saw something within the last, let me see something. Maybe I just read it wrong. Maybe I read the headline wrong, which is always possible. There she is. What's this? Who's this? Missing. Here it is. No, I was right. Missing mom found dead in car inside storage unit. See, I was not imagining this. Okay. I found this people.com, don't judge. The mother of four, Sally Jane Damaris Smith of Montana, was known for always being upbeat. Yep, she vanished on September 25th. On Sunday, her loved ones received the shocking news she was found dead. Her body was found inside her 2005 Corolla in a storage unit just outside Great Falls, in a storage unit, not a storage container. In a storage unit, autopsy. They have not said whether she's a victim of foul play. All right, so she was in a storage unit, not a storage container. Kind of close. But once again, if you want to look it up, there was a Facebook page, I guess, made for it. Help find Sally Smith. So there you go. I'm glad I wasn't totally imagining things. Kathy, Sheree, I read that Stephanie's car was seen several miles south near a high school, but her two youngest sons go to private school. Didn't hear that, Kathy. Thank you for that, though. So if you want to look that up, once again, help find Sally Smith. She has been found. She was deceased. And right now, no news if there's foul play or not. But it did strike me just seeing the headline. All right, woman dies in storage unit. Is this another one like that? Maybe, maybe not. All right, let's move on to something else. Tyler North, still no news. That was news that broke right before last week's live show. In custody are his ex-girlfriend, Michelle, and her boyfriend, Jeremy Lewis. There are no new developments, but although we haven't talked about it a lot on any recent episodes, something we can't forget is the topic of luring people, both men and women, to go places they wouldn't normally go, to do things they normally wouldn't do. And then usually, of course, a murder happens. If there is ever a textbook of what it seems to be a textbook case of luring, Luring, it's Tyler North's. He was definitely lured to that park by his ex-girlfriend, Michelle, probably for sex, even though they were broken up. She lured him there, and then Jeremy was there, and something happened. I think that's what most people determined back when we covered Tyler's disappearance, and I think it even looks more like that now, being that the two of them have been charged with his murder. His remains, though, still have not been found. So, not sure if they ever will find them, but at least I think they charged the right people in this particular disappearance. But if there's any breaking news, we'll let you know. It's just that no breaking news in the last week. There may have been a press conference. If there was, like there was for Steve Panky's, I missed it. Kathy says that she believes Stephanie Hollingsworth still thinks she and her car in a body of water. Certainly possible if she was drinking and driving, as we know, possibly with Esther Westenbarger. Certainly a possibility, Kathy. Certainly. Didn't have many questions for this week, but I'm going to answer the one that I got, and it was from Delane. Delane asked, how are you enjoying your visit with your sister? I'm enjoying it quite a bit, Delane. Also, if you, or your sister rather, don't mind telling us how much older is she than you, and does she have children? Just curious, given your family dynamic, hoping you have a great time. Well, I can tell you this. There's no way that I'm going to tell you my sister's age on this program. That's not going to happen, but she does have a son who lives in Colorado, and her son has two boys. In fact, we FaceTimed with them on Monday evening, and we played this game called Goose that I guess is available on iPhones and iPads, where you have to complete a sentence and you have to pick you all pick some funny answer, and then you have to pick the one that you like the most that is not your answer. I think there were 6 of us playing. I think I came in 5th, so I'm not very proud of my performance. But we did that on Monday night. But yes, she has been married, and she is married, and she has a son, and she is also a grandmother. Her son has 2 sons. I also have a brother, Brian, who I've talked about. He lives kind of close to me in Largo, Florida, not far from where Deborah Bowman disappeared. Disappearance we covered a couple weeks ago. And his wife's name is Laureen. And then I also have a brother, Michael, who lives in the Pittsburgh area, and he's married. And Brian, I should say my brother Brian has 2 children, and his daughter has a daughter. His son has no kids. But then I have a brother, Michael, who lives in the Pittsburgh area. He has a wife, Patty. She has a son from a previous marriage, but my brother, Michael, does not have any kids. So those are my siblings, Diane, Brian, and Michael. I see Brian the most, but I haven't seen my brother Michael since probably over a year ago when I was up in Pennsylvania. He doesn't come to Florida too often. But we're having a good time over here in Orlando, but we didn't do any Disney stuff this time. It is open. People can go, you can wear masks and all that. But we didn't do that this time. I think the last time they were here last year, 2 years ago, this complex that I'm in, this is where my sister was staying 2 years ago when I was over to see her, when Jessica Curtis, Tyler Stice's sister, the guest on for that episode, when she committed suicide, this is where I was. I was in this complex. That was 2 years ago, October 2018. That was also just a month and a half before my mother died. So I've been in this complex before. My sister's used the timeshare in this complex before. But my sister's saying she might be back down here again in December, which would be cool. Because I have no plans on going north anytime too soon, given that it's fall now. Couple more things. The group. New rule that we put in. I did this at the request of the administrators for the group, Heather and Carrie, that we want to be able to make sure that we get to view everybody's comments. And one of the ways that people can get around that is if they block the administrator. They're in the group, but they block the administrators. And so that's a new rule. And so don't block the administrators. Don't block Carrie. Don't block Heather. Don't block me. If you do, you're going to get in trouble. We will give you an opportunity to unblock them. And if you don't, we'll just kick you out of the group and block you. That's how healthy discussions can happen. And I didn't even know that it was even an issue until they brought it up. When the group's been around for how long now? 4 years, almost 4 years. And this just became an issue recently. And it's something that we will enforce. And Heather and Carrie have complete control over that. All right, that's the responsibility to have. I completely trust both of them. So that is how they will enforce that rule. Once again, if you have myself or any of the administrators, Heather Dobbins, Carrie Welburn, any of the administrators blocked for whatever reason, we will give you an opportunity to change it. If not, you're out. If you do not respond to questions from the administrator, not necessarily on a particular topic, but regarding membership in the group, something like that, not on a particular disappearance, but a question along the lines, hey, do you have me blocked? And if you just don't respond to them and you ignore it, they're gone. Just got no time for that. No time. Delane says, I wonder if any other family members are continuing to keep his name out there now that she is gone. I really don't know, Delane. Blaze, do we have trolls in the group? We do, Blaze. Doesn't every group have them? Delane, once again, once in a while, Delane, I will see something. I really don't know how it compares to what Jessica was doing before. Probably not as much, just to be honest with you. Delane says she had a sad. Yeah, she lost her brother to a disappearance, and then she had a child that drowned. Yeah. And I don't know if all of you know this, but I talked to Jessica just 3 days, 2 days, 3 days before she committed suicide. And she seemed fine. In fact, there were pictures of her at some football game or something with friends. And then she was gone 4 days later. Very sad. Sad. So, there's that. And finally, before we get to this Friday's case, and I have to say, what's interesting about Friday's disappearance that we're covering is I did not realize that some other podcasts or programs have covered this disappearance recently as well. I had no idea. Not that I care. We try not to do that on Unfound. We don't want any other program to think that we are piggybacking. They covered a disappearance, so we're going to do it too. I know we don't like it when other people do it, kind of ripping us off, because people do rip off Unfound. We never want to leave the impression that because some other program made a disappearance popular, then we're going to use that popularity. But the disappearance we're covering Friday is one that has been covered by a few, and those hosts will just have to trust me. I had no idea. All right. And I hope they don't feel bad about it. That's the honest to God truth. Had no idea, because we really don't pay attention to that stuff. So I hope those hosts understand. I don't want them to feel like I'm a copycat or something. I think I've been doing this for over 4 years. Everybody knows that now. Last thing I want to cover before I talk about that is that before this Friday's episode is I want to talk about something that I posted just like 10 minutes before I started the show. You just can't go a week without talking about something that's going on in Tom Brown's case. Unfortunately, this week it has nothing to do with any facts or information regarding his disappearance and his death. It has to do with some of these people who have become prominent in covering it. That would be Phil Klein, Dub Wagnon, and Michelle Gomez. All right. And I listed 4 points. There's no availability for comment because I really don't want to hear it. It's just no offense, but it's my group. Get to make the rules. Carrie and Heather enforce the rules, and they have pretty much autonomy, but eventually it all comes back to me. And I just thought I needed to make a statement in it because I saw that, within the last week or so, getting the feeling that people on all of the sides of this are using our discussion group, of which we are responsible for almost 200 disappearances, to settle their scores. That is not why the discussion group exists. It is not a place to settle scores or anything else. All these other people have their own pages, their own groups. They have access to publicity and everything else. They can do that somewhere else if they want to argue, because I'm not arguing with any of them. I've never argued with Phil Klein. I've never spoken to him, ever. Email, text, Instagram, Facebook, phone, nothing. Dub Wagnon, I've spoken to him on the phone once. Once again, I've never argued with him. Critical of Phil, Michelle Gomez, have never spoken to her. Never spoken to her. But then they come into the group, they're back and forth, and each of them trying to gain our favor. Well, you're showing favoritism to him, you're showing favoritism to her, and I'm not doing that. That is not why the group exists. The second point was that that if any of them want to post anything of informational value, if they want to battle on facts and they want to post it on their own pages, we will put those posts in the group. We will do that because that is news. We've published Phil Klein media releases as far as back as I can remember. In fact, I don't even do it. Some of the listeners just do it. Dub Wagnon has published some things. We've posted those. I think some things Michelle Gomez have been posted in there as well. Maybe not as common as the other two. I think that we're not perfect, but I think that we've posted as far as we could. Now, the fact is, none of them like it. No, Phil Klein doesn't like it that we post Dub Wagnon editorials in the group. We know what? Dub Wagnon probably doesn't like that we post Phil Klein press releases in the group. Way it goes. I'm sorry. That's just the way we do things. Now, so that's the second point. However, it's just going to be, backbiting, backstabbing, calling people names and everything else. We're not posting any of that in the group. We're not going to allow them, even though all of them are members in the group, we're not going to allow them to do that. We're just not going to do that because I'm not getting in the middle. I'm not going to play referee. Michelle and Carrie surely do not want to play referee or anything else. Not to mention, once again, we have almost 200 other disappearances where the other people are posting in the group, and I don't want them to see any of that either. Thirdly, as a public figure myself, and I can even tell you now, for example, when I go to disc golf tournaments, now I'm kind of known because I played so many disc golf tournaments. People know me. They also remember me because I'm like the only person there with long hair and everything else. But a lot of them because I am on Facebook. I'm a friendly guy. I know most of the disc golfers. Most of the disc golfers that I play with, I've played with before. They know me. They know what I do. I'm a little bit of a public figure. Little teeny weeny bit. And so I realize that it is important how I conduct myself, what I say, how I act, not just when I'm doing this program. It is important anywhere that I go, anything that I do. Even if those people don't know me at that second, they may find out. And they may remember, Ed Dentzel was in our restaurant, really good guy. Good tipper, friendly. Those things become more and more obvious to me as I realize that more and more people start to realize what I do. And so when it comes to criticism, I'm also used to getting criticism. In fact, there is not a true crime podcast out there that has got as many bad reviews as Unfound did when I started. 1-star review, 1-star review, 1-star review, 1-star review. All the stuff as I posted once again in the group. Bad audio, bad voice, episodes are too long, cut the freaking hair, on and on and on. Don't respond to any of these people. It's not important. And I think it's a bad look when anybody who is a public figure involved in Tom Brown's disappearance or not goes after people who criticize them. In my world, once again, 50 years old, been doing this for 4 years. Before this, I worked in entertainment. I know what it is like to get attention for doing other things. Having worked at Star Trek The Experience for 4.5 years, you gain nothing by arguing with your audience. Even if they are wrong, even if they are lying about you or anything else, you are the one who's going to come out on the short end. It's not important to what we do. Those critics that have, criticized for Unfound for all sorts of reasons, most of, I think, unfairly and wrong. It's not important to what we do here. I would do this program if we had 100 people in the group, in the discussion group, or we had 10,000 in the group. I would do this program if we were only getting 100 downloads a week, or we're getting, I guess, just around 30,000, which I know isn't that great compared to a lot, but I'll take it. Whether it's 100 downloads a week or 30,000 downloads a week. I'll take it either way, because those numbers do not matter to me when it comes to doing this program. What is important is that myself, the program, the assistants are seen as being good professional people. That we can, even if we're getting criticized, that we can bite our tongues and just move on, because critics don't matter. Critics don't matter, not in our work. Now, if you're a restaurant and there's a Yelp review and somebody really screwed you over and everything, maybe that's a little different. Maybe. But in what we do in reporting or solving disappearances and everything, the only thing that matters is if people think you're doing a good job. Are you solving disappearances? Are you getting the word out there? Are you reporting on something and finding new facts? Those are the only things that matter. And the people seemingly have so much time to give to their critics and, go on, write, 200-word essays against people who are criticizing. I just wonder, isn't that time better spent working on the case? Because none of the critics matter. That's the way I look at this. Trust me, if I were to spend time going up against all the critics that exist for this program, I would never get any Unfound work done. Ever. And I keep saying, one of the things that I had to learn the hard way was early on in Unfound's existence, when I was getting all those bad reviews and obsessing over them. And what is it? It was the wrong thing to do. And that's one of the first things. Somebody comes to me, I want to start a podcast. I tell them one of the first thing you do, don't pay attention to reviews. Don't pay attention. You'll know you have a good program when other people independently come to you and say, you know what? I really like what you're doing. I want to help you. What can I do? That's the true decider of whether you have a good program or not. And that's why I always point to my assistants, Emily, Cherie, Carrie, Heather, Eric, Natasha, who are all here volunteering their time. They're here of their own free will, not because of me, but because the program is good and they want to be a part of it. And I keep that in mind. So I don't understand all of being a public figure myself, who also has an imdb.com profile. I don't get it. I just don't get it. And finally, it may very well be that I may agree with Phil sometimes, I may agree with Dub sometimes, I may agree with Michelle sometimes, but it's not because of who they are. I don't know any of them. It just may be that we've come to the same conclusions independently from what other than how they ever got to their conclusions. In addition, when we don't criticize them or anything, they shouldn't take it to mean that we support them. We just going to continue to work. And Tom Brown's disappearance is no different than any other disappearance that Unfound has ever covered. We covered it the same way. We treat all of the media people and investigators and everybody else the same way. We are critical, we praise, we criticize, we praise, we think this is good, we think that's bad, and it's nothing personal. That people think it's personal is the problem. It's the problem. But we're just not getting in the middle of it. I have a lot of complaints, and I think I can talk because I'm like they are. They are public figures. And as I stated in the post, we should all be fortunate. Phil, Dub, Michelle, myself, anybody who does this, that we even do something where people can even hear us and know what we're doing, and that we even get criticized at all. We should be happy that anybody listens at all. Because there's so many people out in this world working their asses off and nobody gives a damn. They don't get criticized at all. They are not recognized. And the day they leave that job, it'll be somebody who's taking the place. It'll be like they never did that job. So being that we are doing things that people recognize, they want to take part, they want to listen, they want to watch, they care and everything. You know what? I think the criticism is worth it. Because there's so many people that would love to have a popular podcast, would love to be a private investigator working on a program and everything else. And they'd gladly take the criticism because they wouldn't have to do whatever else they're doing with their life that they don't like. It's just crazy to me. And I feel so fortunate. that's why when it comes to this and criticism and everything else, I love working on Unfound on Saturday nights. I know that makes me a total nerd and a hermit and everything else, but I work on Unfounds, outlines, everything else, researching, doing mats, Fridays, Saturday nights. I have no social life. You know what? I don't care. I don't care. I'll take the criticism and everything. I will take working on Saturday nights and getting criticism for my work than doing something where I'm not being recognized at all for any good work and having my Fridays and Saturday nights free to go out and do whatever. I think that's thinking about it the right way. We're so fortunate to be doing this. All we have to do is do it. So those were my 4 points. You can read them. There's no commenting allowed. You can like it or whatever, but I'm not going to, get into the comment thing and everything. It's just to be read. It's just to be read. If anybody doesn't like it, once again, I don't care. I'm not getting in any arguments with anybody, but I think that I can talk about it because I am also a public figure and I just handle these things differently. And dare I say it, the right way. All right. So moving on to this Friday's disappearance. This is the disappearance of Angela Green. And once again, I want to extend an apology to those shows out there that just covered this recently. I had no idea. But we went about it the way we usually do. This is an episode where once again, we have 2 interviews. However, unlike last week where I spliced together Misty's and Ashley's, I didn't do it this week. This is the disappearance of Angela Green. Once again, another very new disappearance. June 20th, 2019. Disappearance from Prairie Village, Kansas. I think we've done at least on Jay Lushball was, I think, Kansas, correct? I think we'd have done at least one other Kansas disappearance. And the guests for the episode are Angela's niece, Michelle Guo, Guo. And yes, I got to speak to Angela's daughter, Ellie Green. The title of this episode is No Signs of Death. And the reason it is titled that is because after Angela went missing, Angela's husband, Ellie's father, claims that he had Angela put in a mental institution. He would not give the state or the city, location, nothing, not even if it was in the state of Kansas. And then later he told his daughter that Angela died of a stroke in that mental institution. However, to this day, he has never provided any evidence that Angela he says happened to Angela. No death certificate, nothing. No obituary, no vigil, no mass or any religious service, nothing. But somehow she disappeared just a few days after Ellie got kicked out of the house and went to live with her boyfriend. Now, the kicker to this is that Ellie's father led her to believe that her mother died. This happened once again, June of 2019. And then in February, once Ellie started to figure out something wasn't right, and Angela's family, biological family, her sister and other people ended up getting involved. And the police showed up at the house and talked to the husband. Ellie's father completely changed his story and said that Angela went off with friends. After how many months? 8 months, 9 months, 7 months of telling his daughter that her mother died, he turned around and said that Angela took off with friends and never came back. So that will be the disappearance for this Friday. The disappearance of Angela Green. Once again, I interviewed her niece, Michelle Guo. The niece, Michelle's mother, is Angela's sister. And I got to speak to Angela's daughter, Ellie. Michelle's interview will play first. It is the longer of the two. And then Ellie's will play after that. So once again, Michelle's, then Ellie's. And the episode is called No Signs of Death. So that is it. And I'm not going to read all those compliments. Thank you, everybody, for the nice words. I appreciate it. Thank you. So, as you can see, I'm over in here in Orlando, and I apologize for this if this was distracting, this fan in the background, but I'm telling you, have this door shut. I'm actually facing the door that you have to walk in to come into this room. When you shut that door and you turn that fan off, it becomes 100 degrees in here like that. So I had to keep something going. In fact, I'm feeling a little sticky on my back anyway. But so I'm sorry if this was distracting, but there was just no way around it. In Orlando, sister's timeshare, having a great time going back to Clearwater Beach tomorrow. Talked about the Bradley Brooks poll. Steve Panky, took up a huge portion of tonight's program. And maybe we'll have more in that in the near future. We'll just have to say. More map videos coming. Unfound now, no updates on Stephanie Hollingsworth. Tyler North talked about what's going on in the group. Talked about my new post in the discussion group. Took a question from Delane and then finished it up with previewing Friday's episode. Because I'm going to be leaving for Ocala probably at 10 in the morning to get there maybe around 12:30 or something. Friday's episode will be out early. So you can look forward to that, giving you a heads up on that. And I'll be doing the interview for next Friday's episode on Friday night. I'll be leaving at 10, getting up there at 12:30, practicing the course, going to my Airbnb, doing whatever. And then on Friday night, once again, love what I do. So I don't mind doing interviews on Friday nights. I'm very fortunate to be able to do what I do. I will be doing the interview, and I'm very excited about this. But you'll find out about, of course, the think tank members will find out about it on Sunday. And once again, if you'd like to be a member of the think tank, please go to patreon.com/Unfound Podcast to join Patreon. That would be cool. And before you're done, do not forget to give this video a thumbs up. Please like it so it can show up on YouTube's algorithms. That's it. I'm done. You're welcome, Christine. Twinkle, thank you for the good luck. Played very well last week and came in 4th out of 36. I could have won. I lost by 2 strokes. I could have won. I got to admit, I could have won. Played really well. Just so happy to be able to be competitive. It's just, I've been like 5 years of non-competitiveness. And so it's good to be competitive again. It feels really good. You're welcome, Eileen. Good to see you. Thank you all for watching. Thank you so much. And Think Tank members, Think Tank might get pushed back. I'll let you know on Sunday because I'll be in Ocala. Good night, everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for all the support. Appreciate it. Thank you.